What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and today we're going to talk through my top 10 2025 rookie wide receiver rankings for Dynasty Fantasy Football. We're going to break them down by tiers and then also give you rookie comps for the floor, median, and ceiling for every single wide receiver we talk about in this video. But there is a catch, all right? These aren't per se my rankings. They're actually my wide receiver models rankings. I will be honest. I have been locked down here in the basement for the last 2 to 3 months, grinding away on a new wide receiver prospect model. That's when we only have about 3 videos posted since the NFL Combine. Now, I'll be honest, I wish I took on this undertaking probably 6 weeks before I did, but I got caught up in the spreadsheets, making this new wide receiver model that I feel really good about. It goes back to 2017. It uses cool stuff like yards per out run, career passer rating when targeted. I built a wide receiver teammate score. It is really cool. And pretty much what this video is my comeback to posting videos from here through the NFL draft and then also showing off the new wide receiver RS grades 2.0 model I've been working on. And then we're going to break down what goes into the model. And then we're going to break down the top 10 wide receivers purely in terms of the model. So not my opinion or somebody else's opinion. This is all data driven, which I think is a cool concept for this video. Now, as always, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, especially because we have been posting videos. Leave a like. It helps out the algorithm a ton. Now, let's get into it. All right. I will say, we're going to have timestamps across the bottom. If you don't want to hear about what goes into the prospect model, all of the nerdy stuff that comes along with that, you can skip right to what are the top 10 wide receivers as it pertains to the model. So, what are the RS grades and what was wrong with the old model? Let's get right into it. The RS grades is my prospect model I've been building out for the last couple of years. I think I did it first in 2022. This offseason in 2025, I decided let's look at the wide receiver model and revamp it. I feel like it had some blind spots. It went all the way back to 2007. This time we went 2017. We have some shiny new stats in there. And the idea is, you can see here, these are the top wide receivers in the model dating back to 2017. So from 2017 to 2024, you have the player, their draft pick, their draft year, prospect tier, which we'll talk about in a second. Then you just have, how good have these players been? Number of 20 plus point per game seasons, 18 plus point per game seasons, 14 plus point per game seasons. And what those are, that's pretty much the average for a top 24 season, a top 12 season, and a top 6 season, right? 20 plus, 18 plus, 14 plus. Each of those players average points per game in year 1, 2, 3, or 1 through 3, and then you have their RS grades. That is going to be on the column to the far right. And what the RS grades are is it's a score on a scale from 0 through 10 that predicts a wide receiver's points per game in their first 3 years. Now, of course, that is the window of the most value gain in fantasy football for dynasty purposes. We want players, if we draft them, to produce early. Now, there's some qualifiers here where if you had less than 15 games played, I cut that point per game in half because you don't want guys like Travis Fulgham throwing off the model where they play 15 games but they do pretty well. So that's just a small detail. Now, you're going to see 2 things. Projected points per game years 1 through 3. That takes the RS grade, kind of reverse engineers it, and then spits out, based on the RS grade, how many points per game should these players score in years 1 through 3. And then you have the prospect tiers, legendary, elite, gold. And this chart here actually breaks it down in further detail, where you can see from 2017 to 2022, the idea of the prospect tiers, legendary, elite, gold, silver, bronze. I want to say that I've used these because they were the OG Madden kind of card tiers. But the idea is just to contextualize the grades, right? If I say, okay, this player is an 8.5 RS grade, what does that really mean? It's pretty good, but this is just to kind of put them into hit rate buckets so you can see, how good actually, right? For legendary, it's just one wide receiver since 2017. That's, of course, Jamar Chase. 18 points per game through 3 seasons. Elites, 13.3 points per game through 3 seasons. Gold, 8.9. Silver, 5.7. Bronze, 2.3. We'll talk about it later. There's some guys where, you have an 8.49 RS grade. That doesn't mean that you just get dropped down to gold. You kind of are like a high-end gold, low-end elite in that case. But what that gives us is a wide receiver prospect model that looks at a bunch of different metrics for each and every single wide receiver. All of those are scored 0 through 10, and then it gives you a weighted average at the end, giving you an RS grade 0 through 10. And I think it's a pretty good top 25 or so, where you can see you have Jamar Chase up top. Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. are still kind of unproven. CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Henry Ruggs, Corey Davis. It's not perfect, and that's something that I want to say about prospect models in general, is that if any model looks too perfect or too good to be true, or somehow has Puka Nacua as like the wide receiver 3 in his class, there's probably what's called overfitting going on, where they're out here, using some Fugazi math or some like weird tweaks here and there, or manually adjusting things. This is all straight through just a normal linear regression model is what they call it. And I think it's pretty dang good. It's pretty dang good. I'm very happy with it. Now let's talk about what goes into the model and how it works. So it has 7 inputs, all of them graded on a 0 through 10 score. Then you get a weighted average of all of them based on how much each of them correlate to points per game in a wide receiver's first 3 years, and you get a final RS grade. Now, the first input is a film score. We're going to go through each of these one by one. Again, if you just want to get to the wide receivers, you absolutely can. We're 6 minutes in here, and we haven't talked about a single player. We're just talking about what the wide receiver model is. So, film score. That takes up 43% of the grade. Of course, film score is going to be a huge one because draft capital is the best thing we have, and that is the main part of the film score. Now, is draft capital actually a film score? To me, it is, right? Where most of these teams are watching the players, doing the old school all 22. Of course, there are analytics departments, but they've always looked at numbers in the past. I think most of these guys are watching the film when they pick players, and regardless, draft capital matters a ton because then it also correlates to opportunity once you get drafted in the NFL. Now, the way that we chart this is based on the NFL trade value chart. The Fitzgerald-Spielberger NFL draft value chart. That's from two guys, of course, Fitzgerald and Spielberger. I know Eric is the first name of Eric Spielberger, I believe. They're analytics guys, and it just kind of puts into perspective of the first overall pick is worth 3,000, and then it goes down. Like the difference between 1 and 2 isn't the same difference from pick 225 to 226. That's the point of it. It gives you stronger correlation instead of you doing just like pick 1, pick 2, pick 3, pick 4. And what happens here, just to sort of illustrate with the rest of the inputs, is that for every input, right? If you're a first overall pick, your draft capital grade is 10. Second overall pick, 9.96, 9.92. And it just kind of coincides with each value as you go down. So now, in the past, and this was the issue with the old model, and really something that's an issue with some of my, running back, quarterback, tight end, those models are fine. I'll work next offseason to sort of perfect those as well. But you can see here is really the main issue is up here, right? The old model where it was just, okay, you get drafted first round, you get a 10. You get drafted second round, you get a 7.6. You get drafted third round, 5.5. Day 3, you get a 2.9 in terms of your numeric grade. So if you get drafted first overall versus 32nd overall, it's all the same. It's good enough, but it's not perfect. Whereas here, you have, if you get drafted 33rd overall, you're not dinged a huge amount because it's the second round. It's really just pick by pick by pick, which I think is just a better way to do this. Now, the other flaws of the old model is that it went back to 2007. Now that we're in the world of like fifth-year transfers and NIL, I don't know that the days of like Calvin Johnson and Des Bryant and Demaryius Thomas are all that comparable to now, the present day of guys like Emeka Egbuka or a guy like Matthew Golden who goes to Houston for 2 years, then transfers, or you have Trey Harris who's played like 5 years. It's a different world, so I wanted to bring it up to 2017. Now, we also have in the film score the Lance Zierlein grades. I've used his stuff for a while. It's not perfect, but it adds signal to the model. It is a NFL.com grade that Lance Zierlein has been doing forever. He has it all the way back to like 15 or 14. We used it back to 2017 here. This is the LZ grade sorted for you guys. Devontae Smith, Chase, Neighbors, Waddle, Marv, CeeDee Lamb, Calvin Ridley. Mike Williams, not great, but he had DK Metcalf as the wide receiver 1 in 2019. There's hits, there's misses. The same can be said for draft capital, where guys like Kevin White was a top 10 pick. Same can be said about John Ross, Mike Williams, all of that. Land Zierlein, pretty dang good. It's about a 60-40 split between draft capital, Land Zierlein grade. Now, our next biggest input here, as you can see from this, is breakout score. Now, I want to give a huge shout out to JJ Zachariason. He has the Zap score model that he has over on the late round website. You know, it's on his Patreon, something that he offers. It is very, very cool. Something that he has been sort of talking about is the idea of a breakout score. In the past, early Dynasty days, right, we're talking 2018, 2019, 2020, there used to be a thing called breakout age, right, where if you hit a certain threshold at a certain age, that was your breakout age. But the flaw there is that when you use thresholds, if you have 500 receiving yards as an 18-year-old, okay, you have a 100th percentile breakout age, the same as somebody who has a freshman year where they have 1,500 receiving yards, or someone has 400 receiving yards as a freshman and they just go under the threshold and don't really qualify till age 19. So there's a bunch of flaws there. It doesn't really weigh the impact you had early on in your career, and it also kind of like misses out on guys that just miss that threshold. So what I made is a teammate adjusted yards per attempt. That is kind of my breakout score. Now, I think JJ Zachariason's is different. His is more of like a peak stat. Mine is a total production in a player's first 3 years adjusted by their team and their teammates, right? Where I broke down, and I'm telling you guys, like, I went probably too deep into the sheets when it comes to this model. I have it broken down even to a player's year by year teammate quality. So you can see, and you know, it's tough to sort of really visualize teammate quality because you can use draft capital, but let's say Emeka Egbuka, right? He plays with Jeremiah Smith. We all know Jeremiah Smith is a stud. How do you communicate that to the model before he gets drafted? What I've used is the on-3 recruiting grade. So you get a recruiting grade boost and then the PPR production of your 2 best teammates, right? So these are some of the highest year 1 teammate scores I have in my database. Marv, of course, had JSN and Garrett Wilson in 2021. Waddle had Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs in 2018. Mike Williams had Sammy Watkins and Martavis Bryant back in 2013. Drake London had Michael Pittman and Amon-Ra St. Brown, 2 stud recruits who also had a ton of PPR production in that season. And what that gives you is an adjustment so that if you perform very well and your team is really good, you get a boost. If you perform really well at a school like James Madison, like I think Juice Wells did in this class, you get a little bit of a ding there. So it kind of, you know, if you produce early next to good competition, you get a boost for that. And that's absolutely huge. And this is where we can finally see the best breakout scores in the model, right? Waddle's up there as someone that produced in his first 3 years. And I will say it's adjusted as well so that you get a boost for doing well as a freshman, a smaller boost as a sophomore, and then just like normal for your junior year. So it adjusts for your team, your teammates, and it also adjusts for the year of your career. The first 3 years out of high school is what's graded here. You can see Waddle, Corey Davis is up there, CeeDee Lamb, Garrett Wilson, Marquise Brown, Rashad Bateman, like a bunch of usual suspects. It's not a perfect stat by any means, but it's one of 7 inputs. Then we can go lower down to height-adjusted athleticism. That is just a player's height and a player's relative athletic score. We want guys who are taller and more athletic. We don't want the Rondale Moores, Wan'Dale Robinsons of the world, Tutu Atwell, whatever. We want NFL size and we want NFL athleticism as well. That is a 15% input into the model. Then we have separation score, and I'm still not sold on what I want to call this metric. I'm open to whatever you guys want to call it, but this is just kind of more of a pass-fail metric where it's based on your contested target percentage, which is just your career percentage of targets, how many of them are contested. So J.J. Arcega-Whiteside in his entire college career, which is nuts, 46% of his targets were contested. We don't want jump ball specialists. A lot of these guys just kind of pick on lesser athletes in college, and it doesn't translate to the NFL. We've seen it with guys all across the top here. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is up there. Of course, Nico Collins is your one bright spot, but the rest is Akeem Butler, Denzel Mims, Seth Williams. Surprisingly, Dontavion Wicks is up here. Kelvin Harmon's a name that brings back some memories. Quentin Johnston, huge bust. N'Keal Harry, huge bust. Terrace Marshall near the bottom, huge bust. David Bell as well. So it's just a matter of the higher your contested target percentage is, the lower your score is here. But once you get to like under 20%, everyone just gets like a 10. So it's not really measuring your separation. It's really just measuring that you're not a contested catch merchant. So I'm still messing around with what I want to call this metric. That accounts for 11% of the model. Then we have 6% going to efficiency score, which I think is pretty cool. It pretty much gives you a score for each of your career PFF grade that's weighted by routes, your career passer rating when targeted. So that's just do good things happen when your quarterback throws you the ball. And then you have yards per out run. They're all given a score. They're averaged together for an efficiency score. I will say the most weight is given to passer rating when targeted, then PFF grade, then yards per out run. It's just what helped the model the most. And you can see here are the best efficiency scores in the model. Again, it's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect, right? You have Cooper Kupp, but then you also have Tywan Taylor. But then you have Jalen Waddle, JSN, and then you have Corey Davis. Then you also have Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Marquise Brown, Devontae Smith. T. Higgins crushes this as well. Justin Jefferson crushes this as well. Then you have, Anthony Miller, Marvin Mims, D.D. Westbrook, John Ross. It's not perfect, but it all comes together to make a model that does pretty dang good as compared to draft capital. And then we have a couple more inputs here, one being program quality. So that's just a blend of your ESPN Football Power Index by year. And it's also weighted by your career production, which means if you had, so Javon Baker, for instance, right? He had like no production in his first 2 years at Alabama. He transfers to UCF, and that's where he produces. His program quality is weighted by where he produced. So his is much lower, even though he started 2 years at Alabama. I'm trying to think of a good comp for this class, but you get what I'm saying. Pretty much, where did you produce and how stiff was that competition in terms of team quality, your football power index, and then also your teammate score. Then we have early declare, just a 2% input, really nothing at all. You can see, right, guys like Corey Davis is still elite in the model, which you hate to see, but you're not going to have a perfect model, like I said. And just a little tweak, right? If you declare early, you are above your peers, right? Guys like Malik Neighbors, guys like Marvin Harrison Jr., guys like Jamar Chase, right? Some of the best wide receiver prospects of all time, especially in the modern era. These guys are declaring early. They are ahead of their peers. A lot of the times they're big-time recruits as well. And it all just kind of correlates to better production. I will say, honorable mention, I really wanted a production score that was kind of either going to be kind of like a team-adjusted points per game stat, either for a player's career or for a peak, right? Like a peak production score as well. I tested both. I tried to do a bunch of different testing. None of it mattered. So, whatever production you do on the back end, it doesn't really matter in this model. It's really, in terms of production, it's what you do in your first 3 years, how stiff that competition was, and then also your career-long efficiency. Those are the two things that matter most in this model as it pertains to production. But we have what are called two adjustments, where after your RS grade is made, it is then adjusted based on two things. One being, I'm telling you, this is, it took a lot of work, is what I'm trying to say. But we have some adjustments as well. This one being for deep slot and screen usage. So this is the percentage of your career PPR production in college. How high of a percentage of that are due to deep slot targets? So that's slot targets 20 or more yards downfield. So that's just like cheese, kind of like Jalen Hyatt at Tennessee. And then screens, right? We don't want gadget players. We don't want guys just sort of abusing, cover three down the seam in college. And this is a study that Scott Barrett has kind of been pushing that I wanted to test myself, and it helped the model as well, where it pretty much just takes, if you hit a certain percentage of your production coming from deep slot and screen targets, then you get a discount on your RS grade based on that. So you can see here, Malachi Corley's up there, Demario Douglas, but it's not perfect, right? KJ Hamler's up there, Kadarius Toney, Wan'Dale Robinson, Lynn Bowden, but so is Jordan Addison. So is Christian Kirk, who's pretty dang good. Zay Flowers is up here. Jalen Waddle's up here, but then you also have a lot of misses as well, right? With Jalen Hyatt, Treylon Burks, Tutu Atwell, etc. It's something that you don't want to be in. It's not a death sentence if you hit this, right? Jordan Addison's still gold. Jalen Waddle's still elite. It's just something that adjusts your overall RS grade. And you can see from Scott Barrett, his best seasons since 2018, drafted rounds 1 through 3, ranked by percentage of yards gained on screens and deep slot targets. It's Corley twice, Tutu Atwell. It's a ding on Luther Burden for him. Wan'Dale Robinson, Treylon Burks, Devin Duvernay, Jalen Hyatt, Amari Rodgers. It's gadget usage, and it's not great. Now, again, you're going to have Jalen Waddle on this list, Jordan Addison, Malik Neighbors ranks high in this as well, and so does Drake London a little bit. So it's not perfect, but it is just like a small adjustment at the end. And then also like the huge draft day followers get dinged as well. And this is just based on your Fitzgerald Spielberger, I think I'm saying that right, draft trade value chart value the day you get drafted versus the mock draft database, consensus pick from the day you get drafted as well. So pretty much where were you expected to go? Where did you actually get drafted? If you lose 40% or more of your draft value on draft day, you get bumped down. So it's not anything crazy, but, darlings in the past, like Equanimous St. Brown got yeeted for this. A.T. Perry, Seth Williams, Kayshon Boutte, Troy Franklin's in here from last year. Akeem Butler's in here. Noah Brown, Javon Williams. Like, it's not perfect, and it's kind of, like, it's not anything crazy. Donovan Peoples-Jones, but it's just to, the model might like somebody and disagree with draft capital. And usually when you fall this sharply, right, 40% or higher, it's probably for a reason. Now, when we look at this entirely, the whole point is to beat draft capital. Is the model good? To me, it's pretty dang good. I'm very happy with it. And I hope I don't have to touch this thing forever. The idea is that we build this model. We use it for videos here so I can show you guys a much cooler representation of the wide receivers, a better video product where we have a lot of data. It's also going to be housed on the Patreon. You guys can check it out there. And then also maybe, down the road, if I ever do a prospect guide or some kind of like, I guess like a prospect guide where I can sort of give you guys the model and sort of have cool visuals and everything. Something we're going to build on for the future. But I feel very happy with this. You can see here, you have draft pick value. So that's the Fitzgerald Spielberger draft pick value, which is much better for correlation than just draft pick, which I've done in the past. 0.423 R squared in terms of points per game in the first 3 years versus draft pick value. That's really strong, 0.423. But we improve on that here in the new model at 0.495. I feel pretty dang good about it. R squared is just the coefficient of determination. It's just how much of the inputs explain the outputs. With this model, 49.5% of the inputs explain the outputs. It's nothing crazy, but when you're using modeling for humans, it's pretty dang good. The closer you are to 1, the higher the correlation is there. 0.495 to me is a really good step up on draft capital. And also a good step up on my old wide receiver model that was about like 0.47. And like I explained earlier, I just felt there were some flaws in it. I felt it was outdated. Did this take much longer than I wanted to build out this model and then also explain it to you guys here? Yes, but I'm hoping that the nerds that follow along with the channel like this video, and to reward you guys for listening to me talk about what I've been working on for the past, 2.5 months. Let's break down how the model feels about the 2025 wide receiver class. The way that the rest of this video is going to go is I'm going to show you each player. We're going to put them into their tiers, whether that's legendary, elite, gold, silver, bronze for this class. Talk about the top 10, see the comps the model spits out for it, and just talk about it through the lens of purely the models. These aren't my wide receiver rankings. They are the model's wide receiver rankings. And I do want to make it clear, the entire point of the model is not to give us the answer to the test, but to be a compass and guide us to those answers. So my rankings, my wide receiver rankings, are not going to be identical to how the RS grades have these players ranked and sorted out. But I think it's good to sort of back away from consensus. We're kind of in an echo chamber here where all of us have, channel X, channel Y, whatever. We all have very similar wide receiver rankings. Let's look at it through the lens of the numbers, purely from a data-driven perspective. And our first player we're going to talk about here, the wide receiver one in the RS grades, is a controversial one. Now, I will say we don't have any legendaries, no legendaries, but our first elite wide receiver of this class is Travis Hunter. Now, of course, the RS grade model does not have an input for whether a player will be a wide receiver or a corner. We have none of that at our disposal. I don't know why I can't speak right now, but this is, again, looking purely through his production metrics, his projected draft capital, his Lance Zierlein score, does he get open, his efficiency metrics, all of that. And based on all of that, he should be the wide receiver 1 in this class. And if you guaranteed me today that he would be wide receiver, that he would play 80% plus of the routes as a wide receiver in the NFL, he would be my wide receiver 1, and I would have the inclination to want to put him at my 101. I think he is that good. Because you have to remember, he grades this highly. He gets an 8.9 RS grade. And I will say, let's break down this graphic here, right? Okay. We have all the way from going left to right. We have a player's draft pick, their draft year, the player name, of course, their prospect tier. We have the number of 20-plus point per game seasons, 18-plus, 14-plus, their points per game in years 1 through 3. You'll see a guy like Jordan Addison just has a dash there because he hasn't played 3 years in the NFL yet. Each of these players' RS grades, their projected points per game in years 1 through 3. Of course, Jefferson way outkicked his coverage. Then we have letter grades for some of the more important inputs in the model for each player, right? So Travis Hunter crushes film score, does okay in breakout score, crushes efficiency score, early declare, something that I think should be factored in with Hunter just as like a cherry on top. You have their height in inches, their weight, their slot percentage, so how often are they in the slot back to college. And it's not going to be perfect, right? I have Jefferson in here despite being a 68% guy out of the slot. As long as you're not like 80% plus like slot only, I kept it open-ended because 28% of his routes coming from the slot is still a ton. Their contested target percentage, so that's that separation score metric. And then your usage on deep slot and screen targets. So you can kind of get an overall feel. And what I did is I kind of filtered up and down a couple lettered grades across the board, tried to get some players that were in the same size categories, each of these players. And that gave us a comps list of Devontae Smith, Henry Ruggs, Justin Jefferson, Jamison Williams, and Jordan Addison. He kind of has that explosive athlete with only like 1 true year of production like a Henry Ruggs and Jamison Williams. But remember, he was playing corner most of the time as a freshman at Jackson State. Then as a sophomore, he split more time. And then as a junior, he was a full-time guy. So while his breakout score is like his biggest ding at a B+, he absolutely crushes it in terms of his film score because, one, if he gets drafted 3rd overall, and I will say for all of these comps and for all of these grades, I just have projected draft capital right now. We won't have final until draft day. Travis Hunter, I have him at number 3. It seems like it's going to be quarterback and then one of Carter or Hunter. We'll see how that goes. And if he gets drafted at 3rd, he becomes the highest drafted wide receiver in the model. So huge bump to film score. And then also Lance Zierlein has him at a 6.77 in his grades, which is behind only Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Nabers as a pure wide receiver dating back the last 4 years. So he is a top 3 wide receiver prospect for Lance Zierlein over the last 4 years. He's going to get drafted very highly. And then he also crushes the efficiency score with an A efficiency score where when he's targeted, good things happen. His yards per out run is clean. And I just think when we talk about Travis Hunter, and this is where, I'll interject some of my own thoughts here on top of these player comps. He's really good. I just want to make sure that no matter where he ends up in dynasty drafts, dynasty ADP, I got to be ahead of it because I do just think he is that special of a player. I really do think, I know Justin Jefferson's a pretty crazy guy to have as a comp, but I do think that is his ceiling. Like, I think that he has Justin Jefferson, smooth operator, explosive after the catch kind of upside, like truly top 3 wide receiver in football where you look back and in terms of dynasty wide receivers, it's Chase, it's Jefferson, and Travis Hunter is in that tier. He is truly, I genuinely believe that he is that good. And if you don't believe me, go check out Reception Perception. We'll have Matt Harmon on the channel sometime after the NFL draft. He is just unbelievable. Unbelievable in terms of reception perception. All green success by route tree. 92nd percentile versus man, 97th percentile versus zone, 97th percentile versus press. And Matt Harmon actually compares him to Odell Beckham Jr. in his write-up. Like his write-up for Travis Hunter is just absolutely nuts, calling him potentially the best wide receiver prospect he has charted. So he's really good. A fine wide receiver 1. Of course, as always with Hunter, it's going to come down to not his talent, but how much of wide receiver is he going to actually play. And I don't want to speculate about that too much until we get a landing spot and more information there. Now, our next wide receiver, we have another elite wide receiver. We have Emeka Egbuka. Now, here are his comps. And before we get into his comps, I do want to let you guys know The entire genesis for this video is, of course, showing off the RS grades, showing you guys the RS grades. So if you want access to my tiered rookie rankings with all of the RS grades listed out for every single player between quarterback, wide receiver, running back, tight end, and also something new that I have. I don't have this for any other position. Maybe I'll add it for like running back, quarterback, tight end, but you also get access to on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. I'll have links in the description and the comment section down below. Again, rookie rankings, dynasty rankings, buy-sell recommendations, and of course, you get access to all of my prospect models dating back to 07 for running back, quarterback, tight end. Then this new wide receiver RS grade 2.0 prospect model. All of it's housed in the Discord. And then also, if you want to mess around with it yourself, we have it available for all of you guys here. You can see in your own sheet that you can download for yourself. You can go all the way across, and I have it for every single player. So if you want to mess around and, make up your own comps or use these inputs into your own model or kind of like do your own research, I have the measurables also for every single player. So to me, I think it's pretty cool. It's like every wide receiver that I have in my database available to you guys on the Patreon. Again, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. You can find that in the description and the comment section down below. Now let's talk about Emeka Egbuka here on the tier list. Let's get back here. That's where I want to be. Okay. So when we talk about Emeka Egbuka, he is the wide receiver 2. Again, these things are straying from consensus. It's just purely how the model views them. And I'm just as shocked as you are. But Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver 2, makes sense. When we look at how the model feels about him, 8.53. So he's just barely an elite. Elite wide receiver prospects are 8.5 and above. So he's just barely there. But you can see he's in this range of Jerry Jeudy, JSN, Chris Olave, Juju Smith-Schuster, Chris Godwin, Amon-Ra St. Brown, as a guy who produced in college, plays out of the slot, and is pretty much fine across the board, right? We look at his film score, A-. He's just fine. Breakout score is really good. He produced early next to high-level wide receivers every step of the way, whether that is Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., JSN, Jeremiah Smith this past year. He has had a gauntlet of receivers. He's produced against every single one of them. He's had fine efficiency B+, and he plays 73% out of the slot. Not that that would help his grade, but in terms of why I rounded up these players, now not all of them have a high slot percentage. Juju Smith-Schuster's down in 14%, but Godwin's down in 14% as well. But both of those guys played in the slot in the NFL. I thought that they would be good comps to include on top of that. Then, what also boosts Emeka Egbuka a ton is he tested really well. I think this has gone under the, swept under the rug a little bit as somebody that tested at a pro day. But remember, height-adjusted athleticism is part of the model, and he comes out here, he measures in at, just a hair under 6'1", 202 pounds, 4.45 speed, 38-inch vertical, pretty good shuttle score as well. And that doesn't shock me at all because Emeka Egbuka was like the wide receiver 1 in his recruiting class. He is an absolute specimen, an absolute monster, and I like him a ton. I think that he is in this Chris Godwin, like explosive slot. He looks a lot like an Amon-Ra St. Brown, a Juju Smith-Schuster, JSN in there as well. People forget how much slot Jerry Jeudy played in the college level. He looks a lot like Chris Olave on paper, not from a role perspective, but just from a, big-time producer at Ohio State, maybe like a down year or two, but had enough peaks next to good talent that it didn't really matter, not an early declare, not really sweating it with Emeka Egbuka either. So to me, I am a big fan. I don't know that he'll ever be a top 5 perennial dynasty wide receiver, but I would be absolutely shocked if he's not good in the NFL and posts numerous wide receiver 2 or better seasons in the NFL. He is really, really dang good. Now, the next player we'll talk about, and he is going to be in the gold area, is Tet McMillan. Now, I do want to talk about this as an important disclaimer at the top here. A lot of people are going to see, well, Tet McMillan's in a different tier than Emeka Egbuka. He is, but I do just want to show that the tiers aren't everything. Again, it's more of like a broad view, and it's to contextualize the grades. Okay, well, what does an 8.48 mean? What does an 8.53 mean? And gives you some zoomed out hit rate buckets for every single player. But when it comes to these next 3 players, we have Egbuka, we have McMillan, we have Luther Burden, all within a tenth of point per game year 1 to 3 projections, right? 11.57 to 11.4, that is what, 0.17 points per game, and then a difference of 0.18 points per game from Ted McMillan to Luther Burden. All of these guys are super, super close in terms of the model, and I think you can have these three in any order you want. And the whole purpose of this model isn't for me to go into the draft and say, okay, Emeka Egbuka is my wide receiver 2, I'll be drafting as such. It's no, if the market has Ted McMillan at wide receiver 1 and Luther Burden wide receiver 2, but Egbuka is like a small tier break behind, and you have Matthew Golden maybe getting drafted over him, and Egbuka's landing spot sucks or whatever, Egbuka will then be a huge target for me in the back half of the first round, and kind of leveraging these against the field, where Egbuka will be a target for me, but I don't think as of right now I would have him as my wide receiver 2. I would probably lean McMillan. Again, we're talking 0.05 of an RS grade difference. It just so happens that it's on the borderline of gold versus elite. They're both high-end gold, low-end elite type of guys, and to me, that is absolutely fine. Now, when we talk about Ted McMillan, there's definitely some damn it, I should have had this like this, I think. But there's definitely some concerns when it comes to Ted McMillan, and I'll explain kind of what the model is reading when it comes to Ted. I'm just kind of trying to get this together for you guys. But let's talk about like why the model has Ted McMillan in this spot. And I will say it's not terrible. It's just not elite and like slam dunk wide receiver pick, but it's literally 0.02 less than Drake London, and it's just under the elite threshold. His main setbacks are a B- efficiency score. His like passer rating when targeted, his yards per out run, all of that isn't that great. He played versus mid-competition at Arizona. As good as, Arizona, the Pac-12 collapsed. I think that they were like, I want to search up their like win-loss in each season, but we're talking about a team that was 4-8 this past year. They were actually 10-3 in 2023, so not bad, but 4-8 last year as a team that was like 98th in SRS. So we're talking about a team that's like, not a Mountain West team, but they're not much better than a Boise State or something like that. That's not even in a Power 5 conference. So Arizona was pretty bad. Outside of like Jacob Cowing when he was a freshman, maybe as a sophomore too, Ted McMillan didn't really produce next to anybody. And then also at the end here, you can see a 24.93% contested target rate also gives him a ding in that separation score. Now again, we're talking about an 8.48, just barely missing the elite threshold of 8.5 plus. So we really are nitpicking here. What I would be more concerned about as it pertains to Ted is the downside of a guy that wasn't super efficient and kind of relied on contested catches. Because, of course, you can be Drake London, you can be Cortland Sutton, you can be Kenny Golladay, but there is also some concern that he could be Quentin Johnston or N'Keal Harry. Now, Quentin Johnston's a player archetype that you can't really compare to anybody because Quentin Johnston had like a monster missed tackles force rate, and then he also didn't have the best hands in the world. But N'Keal Harry was a really solid wide receiver prospect that just didn't work out. And all of these receivers have big frames, contested catch guys. London, you can see as well, just a hair over 20%, so he's better than Tet in that perspective as well. But I'm just kind of nitpicking here with a guy that's probably, my wide receiver 2 at worst. I think Ted McMillan is still fine. He produced 2 out of his 3 years. He also has some juice after the catch here. You can see from Ian Harditz. In terms of their final college season, missed tackles forced, you have Neighbors at 30, Burden 30, Ted McMillan at 6'5", 219 pounds with 29. That's more than Travis Hunter, more than Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas, etc. That is really, really solid. And I will say as well, something that you can sort of see from these comps is Ted McMillan being at 22.9% out of the slot as opposed to, say, 10.9% from Quentin Johnston. I like his maneuverability to get into the slot, to work out wide. He can play inside out, and his contested target percentage isn't so high that it's an issue. If it was in that 27% plus like Quentin Johnston or N'Keal Harry, it'd be a concern. There's also, I'm open to hearing some Noah Fafita slander that maybe his quarterback was the issue, but to me, I think Ted McMillan is just fine. He's just not, it is a weaker wide receiver class. He's not this slam dunk 101. He's not a Marvin Harrison Jr. or a Malik Neighbors. He is a high-end gold, low-end elite, which to me is still fine and somebody worthy of a first-round pick in your rookie draft. And then we have, our next player here, which is Luther Burden, coming in with an 8.43 RS grade as a high-end gold with some interesting comps. Now, I will say, I have him projected at pick 34. If he gets drafted 26th or earlier, he bumps up to elite. Something to keep an eye on with Luther Burden, how high he gets drafted. And I think that matters, right? Does he get buried and he kind of falls down draft boards? Kind of like, I think Terrace Marshall kind of did that a little bit. Last year, A.D. Mitchell did that a little bit. Or is some team going to fall in love with him, give him higher draft capital, and then commit to using him like a DJ Moore in these comps, like a Malik Neighbors, like a Brandon Ayuk, like a Rashee Rice, as someone to be a playmaker and build your offense around? That's kind of the question, is how do NFL teams view him? Because I could hear out the case for him being the wide receiver 1, right? Over Ted McMillan. If a team takes him in the first round, if he goes to the right situation, a lot of things have to fall in line for Burden. Now, in terms of how the model is viewing him, he's a very peculiar prospect, is what I would call him. 6'2", 206, good athleticism. That's a big plus for him. He produced early, so A- breakout score, that's good. His efficiency score is not good at all. Passer rating when targeted, it's not good. Yards per out run's not good. And sure, you can blame some of that on quarterback play when it comes to efficiency score with some of these players. But when you think back to earlier in this video, we showed a guy like Cooper Kupp crushing efficiency score. And I couldn't tell you who his quarterback was at, I think it was Eastern Washington is where he went. Or Tywan Taylor's up there too at Western Kentucky. Like, there's a lot of players that crush efficiency score. Puka Nacua at Washington/BYU. I think that he was just after Zach Wilson there. So you can blame it on quarterback play if you want, but it is a ding on his record, his C+ efficiency score. But he looks like these guys, it's tough to find comps, right? 60% slot usage. That doesn't really fall in line with DJ Moore or Brandon Ayuk, but they all have 20% plus. Like, Zay Jones is the lowest one here, right? That's his downside, is that he's like this gimmicky Zay Jones, just like not great. Laviska Shenault's in there as well, but he is somebody that, 228 pounds, not quite the best comp, but like Laviska Shenault, Rondale Moore, Zay Jones. I'm trying to think of kind of like gadgety receivers that didn't really work out. He kind of fits into that mold, but he also has some upside too, right? With like Rashee Rice, Ayuk, DJ Moore. And the issue, and the reason that these guys are all bunched together, is that they're all hovering around like 30% plus deep slot and screen percentage. But outside of Ayuk, none of them are high enough that it actually dings their score. Ayuk gets dinged a little bit, but he's still in gold. And these are just guys who are bigger receivers, but used in that gadgety type of role, which isn't always a bad thing, right? If you are used as a playmaker, it's because they want to get the ball in your hands. And he's big enough that I don't really have a ton of concern about like a low ADOT Wandale type of like, oh my God, this is a pretty awful fantasy asset. And he's also really good after the catch. This is a what I would call a Rorschach test when it comes to wide receivers, but this is rounds 1 or 2 wide receivers since 2017 with a career rate of 30% or higher missed tackles forced per reception. Quentin Johnston, Kadarius Toney, Laviska Shenault are all here, but then so are Malik Neighbors, Drake London, and Luther Burden. Beauty is in the eye of the beholders there. There's massive downside as like a gadgety player, but there's also a huge upside that he is the next DJ Moore, Malik Neighbors, Brandon Ayuk, Rashee Rice, playmaker out of the slot after the catch ability that I think has a really high upside. Now, our 5th wide receiver, who is also in gold, Matthew Golden, out of Texas, and he's a tough one. He is somebody that I've not been the biggest fan of in the process, but I also don't want to lower him too much for not producing, because we've seen guys that have like fluky production. Like Ladd McConkey never had 1,000+ receiving yards in college, and he's pretty dang sweet, right? Matthew Golden. We look here in terms of his comps. None of these guys are mega producers. Xavier Worthy is someone that produced really early, and he's like just barely in this comp list with an A breakout score. But Matthew Golden, good in film score where he's going to get drafted early by the NFL. Lance Zierlein has him over Ted McMillan as like a top 3 wide receiver in this class, so he crushes film score. The issue is that his like efficiency score is not great, but he is an early declare. He did test really well, so he gets some efficiency. He gets some, he gets some early declare boost. He gets some strength of competition boost. He gets some athleticism boost as well. He gets open, and I will say too, right, he doesn't have like a really good peak season, right? We're talking about a receiver that's never had a 1,000-yard receiving season, despite playing 16 games with the college football playoff run that Texas went on down the stretch last year, but he was pretty dang good as a freshman. When we talk about what goes into the model, yards per team pass attempt and the breakout score, which is just yards divided by team pass attempts. I should have said that, and it's on a games played basis. So just the pass attempts that happen in the games that you play. Matthew Golden had in 2022, this is Matthew Golden's freshman season. Yeah, he had 38 catches, 584 yards, 7 touchdowns in 11 games next to Nathaniel Dell, aka Tank Dell, who had 109, 1,417. So that's when we talk about teammate adjusted breakout score, that's a monster season that Matthew Golden still found a way to get on the field for and produce. And his 1.36 receiving yards per team pass attempt is 4th in the 2025 class among 33 wide receivers with 6 or more games played as freshmen. Another qualifier is that for your breakout score to count, each year needs to have 6 or more games played in your first 3 years after graduating high school. So Matthew Golden's 1.36 gets a boost there because of Tank Dell. So he actually produced pretty early at Houston, but if you want to look at the downside of Matthew Golden, through week 14 last year from F-Ball Insights, 1.66 yards per outrun, 48 yards per game, but his last 4 games he crushed over 3+ yards per outrun, over 100 yards per game as an absolute monster. So kind of a beauty's the eye of the beholder thing, and that's kind of what the case is with a lot of these guys, but he comes out as someone that looks a lot like Henry Ruggs, a lot like Jameson Williams, who was like a questionable profile coming out, but, comes from a school with high pedigree. Worthy, again, with the freshman, like the monster freshman year is a little bit of a tough comp in my eyes, but someone that had, pedigree, speed, 4.2 speed, and then didn't have the efficiency score to go with it, right? C- efficiency score for Xavier Worthy. And then Curtis Samuel gets a comp look in there as well as someone that didn't have great production, but early declare, slot usage to a certain extent, and then similar size. Now, Curtis Samuel had a ton of rushing production. Matthew Golden didn't really match that. Now, our last gold receiver, as it pertains to the RS grades, is Jaden Higgins. He comes in with a 7.21 RS grade. So that's a pretty big step down from Matthew Golden, right? Matthew Golden was at 8.12. I got to start, saying that when I bring these players up. But 8.12 goes down to a 7.21. So he's just barely hanging on. He's a low-end gold is what I would call him. But he is somebody that I've seen a billion times, right? We talk about somebody who is, we talk about Jaden Higgins in terms of his measurables in the bottom right. He is 6'4", 214 pounds, runs like a high 4.4, tested really well, 9.63 RAS. This is a tweet I had earlier, right? We have reception perception. Jaden Higgins read all over the place in the same bucket for Matt Harmon as a guy like Keon Coleman, that he does not create separation. So there's a huge red flag there. And this is just somebody that I've seen a lot of, right, where the ceiling is Cortland Sutton, Kenny Golladay, Devontae Parker, which like Devontae Parker is a pretty low ceiling, but just like a positive case, Nico Collins is like the absolute ceiling. But then on the other side of that, in terms of, big athletic X's that also have high contested target rates, you have Denzel Mims, Stephen Hill, Miles Boykin, guys who crushed the combine and then were kind of duds in the NFL. And that's seen in the comps here, right? Sutton's a ceiling comp. Nico Collins is a ceiling comp. But Denzel Mims is also somebody that is in his range as a contested catch guy, crushes the combine, non-early declare, Big 12 conference as well. So just a buyer beware thing with Jaden Higgins, where I think he can be good. He has the upside, but there's also zero floor when it comes to these big athletic receivers who get drafted because they're big and athletic. Now, this brings us down to the silver tier for our wide receiver 7, his teammate at Iowa State. Let me know how you feel about these graphics as well. I made these all myself. We have Jalen Knoll here. Let me know in the comments if it's Knoll or Noel. I think it's Knoll. But as we get deeper, you're going to see that these comp lists get bigger and bigger. And we're just going to move Elite up to the top here so we can just see everybody. But it's going to get bigger and bigger because as we get lower down the list, the ranges just become super wide, right? Like these guys can be like absolutely nothing, like an Antonio Callaway or an Anthony Schwartz, or they can be producers in the NFL, like a Christian Kirk, like a Curtis Samuel. or like a Jaden Reed, right? That's sort of Jalen Knowles' range here with a 6.79 RS grade. Now, he is weird. You can see at the very far right, 34% deep slot and screen percentage, right? So he is a little bit more of a gadgety guy. It's not so much that it's to his detriment, but he is up there. He gets used in that, right? Zay Flowers, Christian Kirk, Jaden Reed, Curtis Samuel type of role. We're going to get some rushing production, some slot work, some screens, and he tested as a really good athlete as well. But the thing that shocks me, that to me is concerning about this archetype, where if you're going to be a guy who wins with screens or wins as a playmaker, he's not like your Luther Burden. He actually has the stone worst missed tackles forced per reception rate in this entire class, with guys who are barely even draftable, like Arian Smith, Bo Collins, Isaiah Nayer. These guys are just... I have all of the NFL Combine invitees in my database right now. Then, of course, when the draft happens, I'll be cutting out everyone that's a UDFA. He is down here with potential UDFAs in terms of missed tackles forced per reception, which isn't great. His yak per reception as well, if you just want to say, oh, well, he just runs away from guys, not that great either, in like the mid-5s. So something to look at with him where, for a guy of his archetype, you want that to be better. That does spook me a little bit, but I do like the upside of a Jaden Reed, a Zay Flowers, Curtis Samuel, Christian Kirk. But we'll see. He seems a little bit more like a poor man's Jahan Dotson, which you hate to say out loud. Then we have wide receiver 8, and a guy who I would say is probably the RS grade darling thus far, and that's Torrey Horton. I have him projected, as of right now, 115th. So he's the first day 3 wide receiver on this list, despite guys behind him having second round or third round draft capital. Despite a bad film score, he is still up here with a 6.72 RS grade, and he's really hard to make comps for because, again, you're looking for guys in the database that score well, don't get drafted highly. He's someone who gets, B+ breakout score is really dang good, the biggest input among the production metrics, and the reason for that is that he produced early next to Romeo Doubs and Cole Turner. Cole Turner's an NFL draft pick for Washington. Romeo Doubs, of course, we all know him. And as a true freshman, Torrey Horton had 37 yards per game, 20 catches, 336 yards, 5 touchdowns in that offense. That Nevada team was 7-2 as well. So really not a terrible team. A pretty stacked wide receiver room. And then also produces again as a sophomore at Nevada, transfers to Colorado State, has back-to-back 1,000-plus yard seasons, and then has a down year in year 5. But again, we don't really chart year 5. We chart the efficiency from year 5, but that down year doesn't really hurt him as much as it probably hurts him in NFL draft circles. Now, the hope here is that he gets drafted highly because he tested well, or not highly, but relatively highly, where maybe he goes in the late 3rd. Like, that would be absolutely massive for him. And he came in here 9.81 RAS, 6'2.5", 196 pounds, 4.4 speed, 37-inch vertical as well. And his comp list is weird, right? So he's a non-early declare, breakout score is great, drafted late, bad program quality, non-early declare, but he tested well. And he has a really weird usage profile where he had about 20% of his routes out of the slot. So someone that can play inside and out. But for a guy who's 6'2", on the perimeter, 11% of his targets were contested. So he's not a contested catch merchant at all. He's actually like getting separation. He's someone I want to see what Matt Harmon says about. I want to see what his separation metrics are there. It's tough because like when that's your metrics, you get some comps that are more like, Rashee Rice, Khalil Shakur, but I don't think that he is that level of like gadget player. I actually think Romeo Doubs is a great, just prototypical X receiver. Also a guy under 20% contested target rate despite being an X and having that size. I think he's really solid. And to me, it's pretty impressive to have under 12% of your targets contested at that size, produced next to Romeo Doubs, transfer to Colorado State, have back-to-back 1,000-yard season. So I'm a big fan of him, and we'll kind of see how that goes in terms of where he gets drafted. Then after that, we have another silver wide receiver prospect, Trey Harris out of Ole Miss. And he is somebody that is so tough to find comps for. It's super wide. Pretty much what I did is throw out height and weight, throw out RAS. This is essentially just players who had a bad breakout score, right? So we had a C breakout score, but an A- efficiency score. I think he has the second best efficiency score in the class behind just Travis Hunter. Trey Harris, of course, he famously had like over a 5 yards per out run in his final year. But he's really confusing, right? So he gets dinged for a bad breakout score. He gets dinged for 28% of his targets being contested. But then he also has an A- efficiency score. And when you get that bad of a breakout score with that good of an efficiency score, you get some good comps, right? Like Ladd McConkey. You get some good comps like Puka Nacua, Tank Dell. But then you also get Roman Wilson, Anthony Miller, John Ross, Paris Campbell, Kadarius Toney, Carlos Henderson. His comps and his range of outcomes are all over the place. This is maybe a better look as well, right? He has a 6.54 RS grade, which is like a fine silver round 2 pick. And you can see here, this is the best efficiency score among non-round 1 wide receivers in my database. And then next to that is their contested target rate. So you have Trey Harris kind of in the middle there with 8.08. He has 28% of his targets contested. The other guys that are on this list, right, high efficiency score, but then also high contested target rate is T. Higgins. That's a smash. Cooper Kupp, sort of. Puka Nacua. Then you have J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Then you have Michael Gallup. But then you have Quintez Cephas, who's not great. Then you have Tyler Johnson, who's not great. And you have Terrace Marshall, who's not great. So, again, really, really wide range of outcomes. But when your efficiency score is that good, I do want to bet on you in the late rounds. We'll see what his like landing spot is. We'll see how he does. He tested well. Trey Harris is a tough one for me to wrap my head around. And then our last wide receiver, the wide receiver 10 in the RS grades as it stands right now, Alec. Man, I even like looked up a video of how to say his name. Io Manor. Alec Io Manor. But super wide range. He is tough, right? Where he has fine film score where he's going to get drafted somewhere on day 2. He's athletic, right? 9.71 RAS. Fine production, right? B- breakout score, but then you have a D+ efficiency score, so he's not efficient at all. He has 26% plus contested catch rate, not good. But he is an early declare. So he has like fine production, early declare athleticism, but then you also have bad efficiency contested catches. I like him more than the RS grade model does. He produced 2 out of the 3 years at Stanford. It's a bad Stanford team, but he did have maybe one of the best games, individual games of any wide receiver in this class, where this is a tweet from Dynasty Zoltan. You can see here he had 13 for 294 and 3 up against Travis Hunter. He's an X-receiver. He certainly has like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside level downside, but he could also be pretty dang good. Where some of these comps, right, we have Cortland Sutton, Gabe Davis, DJ Chark, Kenny Golladay, even like Josh Palmer's had like decent, success in the NFL. Alec Pierce as well, but you also have the downside of like, Brian Edwards, Amara Darbo, Michael Wilson, who I guess is like fine, but you know what I mean? Like we're getting to a range where it's not that sexy to take these receivers. But that's going to do it for us today. That is the final top 10 for the wide receiver RS grades here. But I did want to let you guys know, like I am just like super excited to be back. We are back. The plan is now post this video today, get another video out sometime, like Sunday or Monday. We're going to start streaming on Wednesdays, I think, as well. And pretty much we're just going to be, we're putting the spreadsheet stuff to the side. Finally, it took way longer than I wanted it to be. I wish that I had that done before the combine, not April 4th, but here we are. It happens to the best of us. I'm very proud of how it came out, but now I'm very excited to get back to creating videos, producing content, doing what I love the most. It was good to kind of, refresh and recuperate in the spreadsheets, but now we're here. We have a lot of data to mess around with when we talk about these players, and we have, from now to the NFL draft and then like mid to late May of just pure Dynasty content. We'll have on some guests. We'll produce a bunch of videos. Things are going to be great, so make sure you leave a like, make sure you stick around, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and then also, of course, I will let you guys know one more time that if you want access to all of this cool stuff, I have the wide receiver model. Every wide receiver that was invited to the NFL Combine, charted in the RS grades, put on a Google Sheet for you guys to see, and then also have pictures and screenshots of the RS grade library, which is for every single prospect model I have in my database, all housed in the Discord for you guys to look at. Patreon.com/Ron Stewart. You get access to all my prospect models, all of that data, rookie rankings and tiers, the dynasty rankings, dynasty buys and sells. subscriber leagues, exclusive Discord stuff, all of that and more, all on the Patreon, patreon.com/RonStewart. But if you can't support there, just leave a like, subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, oh, oh.